Hello and welcome back to reaDIYsteaDIY. Today we're going to talk about wet cleaning records with a spin clean washer system. We'll look at all the features of the system and we'll talk about the system's pluses and minuses. Let's get going. You should do a dry clean on every side of every record before you play it. But in the end, wherever you play a record, there'll be dust in the air and other contaminants around, and the record is going to attract that. That's going to lead to crackles and pops while you play it, and eventually that's going to get so distracting you're going to want to clean it wet. Also, there's nothing more fun than finding a hidden gem at a flea market or an antique store, and those records can sometimes come in pretty rough shape. If you want to save something from landfill, you got to clean it up, and in many cases wet cleaning is the only way to do that. Eventually, we all come around to the realization we have to clean our records wet. And for someone who's new to vinyl, that can be an intimidating process. There are quite a few different ways to do it, a lot of suggestions, and a lot of really strong opinions. But if you're considering wet cleaning your records, you've probably heard about the spin clean. Almost everybody has heard about it or used it or has an opinion about it. It's a really old system, been around since the mid-70s. It's reasonably cost effective. It's pretty simple. To me, an item that's lasted that long on the market, that is still viable and used by people, is a tool worth checking out. So today we're going to go over the pluses, the minuses, how to build it, how to use it. In the end, a couple of tips, and then hopefully you can decide. So the kit I ordered came some years ago. As far as I understand, all kits come with 2 rollers, 2 brushes, a bottle of washer fluid, 2 drying cloths, and the spin clean basin itself. The spin clean basin comes with a little lid. Essentially, it's just a bath for your records. When you're starting out, first you put in the rollers. The rollers can go in any one of 3 possible positions. The outside notches are for the standard LP record size of 12 inches. That's most of the records you're probably going to clean. If you've got some 10-inch 78s, then that's the second notch in, and the innermost notch is for 7-inch 45 RPM records. Singles. It's worth noting that the spin clean fluid, the company claims is safe for all records, including shellac records. So if you've got 78 records, they're probably shellac records, and that's why there's a 10-inch position for the rollers. You can safely clean them with spin clean fluid. So the next step is to add the brushes, but before you do that, you got to make sure they're clean. These brushes have sort of a velour coating to them and they attract dust, obviously. So if you've got dust and debris in the brush, that's not going to be good for the record you're about to clean. So you got to make sure to start with clean brushes. Put it under some filtered water and brush them together, or use a soft bristled toothbrush to make sure there's no debris in there. So you make sure to insert the brushes in the right way. There is really only one way. There's a little outward notch at the top. The brushes should fit in quite snugly against one another. And you're ready to start adding water. So the spin clean basin has a little line in it at the top that indicates how far you should fill it with water. The basin holds 24 ounces. The instructions say you could use tap water in a pinch, but they recommend using distilled water because, as I'm sure you know, tap water can vary in terms of its mineral content. And since 99% of what you're going to put in this bath is water, you want to make sure that it's the purest water you can get. Distilled water is really cheap. I got this container for 99 cents, and you actually don't use that much. One of these will last you a long time. So once you pour the distilled water into the basin up to the line, then it's time to add the spin clean fluid. So I don't know exactly what's in the spin clean fluid, but I do know that the company advertises that it has some kind of flocculant in it. That is to say, it grabs dirt and pulls it to the bottom of the basin. This is kind of important when you're cleaning more than one record. You don't want the brushes to hold on to the dirt from the previous record and smear it all over the next one. The company recommends that you pour the fluid over the brushes. Basically, the brushes do all the heavy lifting, and while it doesn't really matter because you're creating a solution and the spin clean fluid will equalize throughout the water, it's a good idea to pour it over the brushes because they do all the heavy lifting in terms of cleaning. Once you've loaded the spin clean with water and fluid, it's pretty easy from there. You just insert the record carefully between the brushes and let it gently rest on the roller. After you insert the record into the fluid, you place your fingertips on the edges of the record and you rotate it. 3 times clockwise, 3 times counterclockwise. Then you pull the record out and dry it off with the cloths they provide you. The company actually recommends that once you've made one bath, you can clean between 20 and 50 records with it. That's obviously going to vary depending on how dirty the records are, but I often just change it after 10 or 12. Once you're done towel drying the record, it's a good idea to let it air dry. The towel is pretty absorbent, but there's going to be some moisture trapped in the groove of the record, so letting it air dry before you expose your stylus to it is pretty important. Some people use dish racks, some people balance the records on cups. Neither of those solutions worked for me. The dish rack always seems to touch the playable surface of the record when you lean it over, and cups just seem like, you could knock it over. So I built a little drying tool for mine. It's basically just a grip head, which is a kind of clamp we use in the film and television industry, holding a piece of 1/4-inch stainless steel. I just paid a local metal supplier to cut the piece to the right length for me, and then I use 3-inch painting sponges and I use those to separate the records. It works great. After you wet clean the record and it's properly dried, you put it on your turntable and you should hear a difference. It should sound cleaner. Less crackle, less surface noise, less popping. When you're all done cleaning, the company recommends that you can, if you want, leave the fluid in the spin clean basin for up to a week. Hey, maybe you'll want to clean some records later. I often will just discard the fluid and clean it up. Either way, make sure to pull the brushes out of the liquid, especially if you're planning on saving liquid for future use. Leaving them pushing up against each other in the liquid is a great way to shorten their lifespan and also flatten them out, so they can't push up against the record as well as they used to in order to do their job properly. Squeeze the liquid out of the brushes and leave them on top of the basin to dry, and then basically everything fits inside the basin to store away. The company recommends that you wash and dry the cotton cloths that they give you for drying, especially in between sessions, so they maintain their absorbency and fluffiness. So that's how the spin clean works. Let's go over the pluses and the minuses. So the pluses with the spin clean are many. First of all, it's quiet, it uses no electricity, it's cheap, it cleans both sides of the record at the same time, and it's small. It has a really small footprint. It stores away really well. And in the end, it cleans the record. I've owned mine for a number of years. I've cleaned hundreds of records with it, and the records always sound better after cleaning with my spin clean. Are there minuses to the system? Of course there are. The one thing I don't like about the spin clean so much is that when you're pushing a fat record through the spin clean, you're definitely putting forces on that record that the record was not meant to withstand. I'm not saying you damage the record, because I don't think you do, but when the record flexes a little, it leaves me feeling a little weird. There's another part to it too. Since it's basically a bath, every time you clean a record, you make that bath a little bit more dirty. I wouldn't say it's like getting into a bathtub after another human being. It's really more like getting into a swimming pool after another human being. Just because of the flocculant aspect of the fluid. Pools use flocculant to ensnare dirt and bring it to the bottom of the pool so you can vacuum it out. And the spin clean uses flocculant to ensnare the dirt and trap it at the bottom of the basin so that it stays away from subsequent records until you exchange the bath water. Technically speaking, any dirt or debris that comes off one record could potentially, I suppose, end up on the next record, or even worse, ground into the next record. But that just doesn't seem to happen. And finally, at the end, obviously it's a bathtub. You gotta clean the bathtub. The spin clean is a pretty tough thing to clean. There's sharp little bits, they dig into your hand, there's parts that are hard to reach. You end up creating all kinds of little tools to clean it out and make sure that it's spotless for the next cleaning session. That can be a little annoying. But in the end, I really like mine. It does a good job cleaning, it costs very little, and when I'm done with it and storing it, which is most of the time, it stores away perfectly. And now, a couple of tips. The brushes obviously push up against the records. If you clean thick records before thin records, you'll be compressing the brushes before you get to your thinner records. They won't do as good a job of pinching your thinner records. Good idea to start with thin records first and move your way to thick. Leave the 180 gram vinyl for the end. If you can, not a bad idea to clean your clean records first and then your dirty records, but really, you should just be changing the water when it starts to look like it's getting murky. If there's a fair bit of dirt and debris at the bottom, just change it. There are 4 rubber feet on the spin clean. They help the spin clean to grip the surface of whatever you're working on. They're pretty small and they're glued in, so they come out a little easily. Especially with the forces you put on a spin clean while cleaning a record, it's pretty easy for 1 or 2 to pop out. They sell replacements on their website, but instead of going that route, I just went to a hardware store and got some rubber anti-slip feet for furniture, and then I used a 1/4-20 machine screw about 3/8 of an inch long, and it just happened to fit perfectly into the hole. Now I've got bigger rubber feet that are a little more stable, and instead of being glued in, they're screwed in. I'm not sure if every model of spin clean is the same, but on mine this worked perfectly. It was actually kind of surprising how easily the screws fit into the holes. In the end, for all the pluses and the minuses, I like my spin clean. At $80 or even less on sale, it's pretty hard to go wrong. So thanks very much for listening right to the end. I really appreciate that. If there's any way you could like or subscribe, I'd really appreciate that too. Even if you don't, please feel free to leave a comment. Comments help me make the channel better, and that's what I'm after.